Maneva na sema PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV de osia dem yopo.
You are once again welcome to PENDREAM TV, the only channel that brings you the best and latest updates in politics. If you are new here, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, like and also share to other members to watch as well. You can equally leave a comment at the comment section after watching or send us a voice note on our WhatsApp number, which is 0277128777. Thank you. I want you to join me listening to what we have for you today in the political arena, as we always do, bring your way the authentic source of news and facts from the political arena. Today we bring you another version, which you will like it. Subscribe for more video, like and also share to other members to watch as well. Thank you.
And so snipers of it will be on your screens, and they say that the decision by the President, John Dramani Mahama, to suspend her ladyship, the Chief Justice, under the authority of Article 146 is nothing short of a brazen judicial coup. It is also a reckless abuse of executive power and a direct assault on the judiciary and its independence. They also continue to say the move taken while legitimate legal challenges are pending before the Supreme Court also reeks of intolerable political vendetta. It is judicial intimidation. And then also they say a calculated attempt to pack the court with NDC sympathetic justices as openly promised by President Mahama in Akosombo in 2023. More importantly, they make some conclusions there that the president's actions confirm what many have long suspected. That is not about accountability, but about raw political control. They also insist that his public declaration at Kosombo that he intends to, in effect, balance the judiciary by appointing NDC-aligned judges, so to speak, exposes the ulterior motive behind the sudden rush to remove the Chief Justice. But we do know that by Article 146, the President made the argument through his spokesperson that he only, based on what the Constitution says, just forwarded those petitions to, again, the Council of State. And a determination of prima facie by the Council of State then also meant the President needed to take a decision, because it implied, and so that implication that investigations would have to be undertaken once a prima facie has been established to determine whether, right or wrong, the Chief Justice committed acts or omissions while in office, or flouting due regulations as enjoining his office. But it's a difficult situation for everyone as a country. But again, that's why precedents are always set in every democratic dispensation. As a legal practitioner, having followed this as well, Edudzi Tamekloe, would you say that the minority are right, that President John Dramani Mahama is on a political vendetta, a coup, so to speak, flouting due regulations, and that power of discretion has been exercised wrongly?
Okay, so once again, I just want to thank your viewers for this opportunity. The comments from the MPP micro minority and the MPP as a whole is a calculated attempt to politicize an obvious constitutional duty that President Mahama is performing. But the reason why you'd expect that the MPP would want to politicize this obvious constitutional duty being performed by President Mahama is because of a certain fear, a certain, I'll call it, panic. Because if not, has President John Dramani Mahama done anything today outside the scope of the 1992 Constitution?
How do you mean, Edudzi?
The answer is no. President Mahama has not done anything outside what the Constitution requires him to do. As we speak, we have only one President of the Republic. President John Dramani Mahama does not share that position with Afenyo Makin. He doesn't share that position with Atachia. He doesn't share that position with lawyer Dakum or Bafwewa. There is only one president of the republic at any time. And today, it is President John Dramani Mahama. Article 146 of the 1992 Constitution is clear as to the procedure, what ought to be done. Has President Mahama done something contrary to what the Constitution stipulates? No. Now, the 1992 Constitution envisaged that we'll get to this point. And let me tell you this. You see, in the past, in drafting this 1992 Constitution, it mirrors our history. Because Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, the record says that when he was not happy with the acquittal of Tawi Adamafio and co, decided to remove judges that he was not happy with. And so when we're crafting the 1992 Constitution, we place in it elaborate procedures if there is an intention to remove a superior court judges. Thankfully, post-1992, we have the benefit of how judges have been removed. Superior court judges from high court to Supreme Court judges, there is a process for their removal. In fact, based on the ANAS investigation, Tiger Eye or something, some high court judges were removed. Incidentally, it was under President Mahama, if you remember. Now you see, if you read the Constitution, Article 146, it says, a justice of the Superior Court or chairman of so and so shall not be removed from office except for stated misbehavior, incompetence, or grounds of inability. Now listen, this way is even more profound. He said that you cannot remove a justice of the Superior Court except in accordance with the procedure specified in this article. So you notice that all the MPP lawyers combined, so far none of them is able to say that President Mahama had breached any provision of the Constitution. Because you see, what distinguishes a good leader from others is who his advisors are. President Mahama had the benefit of having a very matured former Attorney General as his legal counsel in the person of Marietta Brew. Now, with the benefit of such sound legal advice, together with the learned Attorney General and the lawyers he has, he had decided to stick to what the Constitution says. It's not an amateur. No. So what President Mahama has done is to follow the strictures of the Constitution. Now, Article 146(3) says, if the President receives a petition for the removal of a justice of the other than the Chief Justice, and in this case, it's the Chief Justice. So you notice that in the Constitution, there is only one person to perform that function. And that person is the President. Now, our friends in the MPP are saying that when the people or the petitioners had their petition or grounds, President Mahama ought to have shut the Jubilee House and block the airspace, block every way, so that they cannot come there and present the petition to him. But you see, there's something unique about President Mahama. Consistency. Let me tell you this. MPP member called Richard Nyama, you know him. Yeah, I know him very well. He even contested the MPP primaries, I think in Pandai. Yeah. Somewhere around 2015, 2014. Brought a petition for the removal of an appointee of President Mahama in the person of Madame Vivian Loretta Lamptey, the then Shrad boss. What did President Mahama say? He didn't say, oh, this is an MPP person bringing a petition to have my own appointee removed, and so I will close my door. No. He took possession of the petition from Richard Nyama, went through the process, and eventually, you know what eventually happened? A committee, just as this committee, was set up by the then Chief Justice, that's George Nawood. And this is what the letter says. That's the 5th January 2015. Mr. Richard Nyama, petition for the removal from office of the Commissioner for the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice under Article 146. So President Mahama, consistent with his previous conduct, where an MPP person brought a petition to have the then Shrag Board removed, complied with the Constitution. And listen, when everything was done, the then Chief Justice put up a 5-member committee comprising His Lordship Justice Eni Yeboah, His Lordship Justice Bennett, Her Ladyship Justice Mariama Owusu, one Edwin Barnes, and Brigadier General Fuseni Idrisu. So it was this 5-member committee that investigated the complaint against Madame Loretta Lamte. And in fact, the lawyer for Richard Nyama at that time was my own senior Samson Ladi Ayeneni. They went through the process, gave their recommendation, and President Mahama, pursuant to Article 146, caused to be removed.
What's your point with this? The
point I am making is that President Mahama has demonstrated consistency and fidelity to the law. President Mahama has not done anything. Now let's juxtapose that by parity of reasoning to the instant petition. We are being told that 3 petitions came relative to Her Ladyship, the Chief Justice. When President Mahama received the petition, right, do you know what he did? His communication minister, information minister, the Honorable Felix Kwachi, put out in the public that the president is in receipt of this petition for the removal of Her Ladyship. Pursuant to that, he gave an indication that the Council of State will be informed so that the Council together with him will perform the constitutional responsibility when said petitions are removed. Subsequent to that, the MPP, led by the Member of Parliament for Tafo Pankrono, Vincent,
also a legal practitioner, and
the former Attorney General, Godfrey Ebu Adame, rushed to the Supreme Court. Relief 1 had to do with the fact that Her Ladyship, the Chief Justice, was not notified. And for some of us, we say, how did Asifua become aware that Her Ladyship was not notified? Was she in communication with Her Ladyship?
How did you deduce that?
No, because Relief 1...
put the cat before the horse?
No, Relief 1. Not long ago, there was a letter from Her Ladyship, the Chief Justice, copying the Association of Judges and Magistrates and some other people, requesting from the President copies of the petition for her response. President John Dramani Mahama properly advised, proceeded. In fact, Her Ladyship wanted 7 days. President Mahama says, no, I will even give you 10 days so that you can prepare your whatever response you have adequately. My information shows that Her Ladyship didn't just responded to the petition. She actually filed a supplementary response. Now, having filed a response and a supplement, clearly what that suggests is that even per her own conduct, is that she had joined issues with the petitioners. So usually in law, like we always say in the judicial court process, when you join issues with maybe a plaintiff or whatever, you are simply saying that this matter should be set down for trial because there are controversies. That is the only responsibility of President Mahama at this stage. To just demonstrate that there are controversy. And so when the petition came and she got the opportunity to respond, she put together response and documents. That is not the responsibility of President Mahama. It is not for President Mahama to interrogate those documents. All President Mahama is supposed to do at this stage is to make a determination that is the petition frivolous or not. How can a frivolous petition get a response and a supplementary response with documents attached? So at this point, all President Mahama had done together with the Council of State is to say that, look, this is not frivolous. And to the extent that it is not frivolous, I am setting up together with the Council of State, having been properly consulted, a situation where, yes, a situation where they are now going to investigate the merit or otherwise. At this point, President Mahama has not said Her Ladyship, the Chief Justice, is guilty. All he said is that the petition had met a certain minimum threshold. It is gone beyond frivolity. So for that matter, let a panel that the Constitution itself says should be done. Now, with His Lordship Justice Gabriel Puaman, Justice Asiedu, one from the military.
As the lady by Dalubu.
Yes. Then there's a professor, and then Domolevo. Domolevo have distinguished himself in this country. Very respected person.
You're saying particularly because there could be content about misappropriation of funds or...
No, from all indication, the understanding is that portions of it relates to the Auditor General and his findings. And to the extent, who better appreciate the issues of audit than the former Auditor General? And so, as we speak now, what President John Dramani Mahama had done is basically to just comply with the 1992 Constitution. But you see...
Just to make this intervention, while that is complying with the tenets of the 1992 Constitution, I've heard the Member of Parliament for Minsha Sound, who is also a legal practitioner, by the way, Nana J. Bafuewa, who insists that discretionary power that the president exercises or is exercising, perhaps he shouldn't have been exercising that without a constitutional instrument in place, etc. Even though it's been exercised also before by former presidents.
You see.
How is that a justification?
You see.
Or not?
You see, sometimes people like Bafuewa and others betray a certain lack of, what shall I say? I want to be careful with my choice of word.
I don't understand. You're saying they're exhibiting double standards?
No, I think they have gone beyond the issue of double standard. Selective amnesia.
You've listened to him, haven't you?
Desperate blindness. You understand? Bafuewa has been a lawyer in this country. On what basis did President Mahama remove, what shall I say, Madame Lamte? On what basis did Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo remove Charlotte Osei? But you see, they want to throw dust into the eyes of Ghanaians. Article 146(11) says, quote, the president may at any time revoke a suspension under this article. More importantly, if you look at the federal constitutional provisions, it says that where a petition has been referred to the committee, the president may, in the case of the Chief Justice, acting in accordance with the advice of the Council of State, by a warrant signed by him, suspend the Chief Justice. Complete. That's what the law says.
And that's where we are currently.
And that is where we are.
Why is that important for the suspension to happen, Edudzi Tamekloe?
No, because the Constitution envisaged that should happen. There is a possibility of that happening. So the Constitution is provided for it.
So that...
And President Mahama, as we speak, has just complied with that constitutional provision without more. Now, they confuse something. You see, the Supreme Court, in the case of Ransford France and the Attorney General, where the Constitution in Article 47 says that the Electoral Commission may create new constituencies, you understand, and now came back to Article 296 to say that if you look at Article 296, the constitutional provision, and it's important that I reference it because it's public education. If you look at Article 296, and this is where they want to confuse people by saying that President Mahama has done something contrary. Okay, here. It says, listen, where in this constitution or any other law, discretionary power is vested in any person or authority, that discretionary power shall be deemed to imply a duty to be fair and candid. So far, President Mahama has said, look, give her the petition. Let her file her response. She even filed a supplement. So how was that capriciously done? He said, the exercise of that discretionary power shall not be arbitrary, capricious, biased, either by resentment. What has President Mahama done? The petitioners are not NDC members. In fact, in the case of Loretta, it was a known MPP person, including Frank Anodon. President Mahama didn't say go away. He took it, acted on it, and even removed his own appointee. Now, this is where it gets interesting. He says, quote, where the person or authority is not a judge or other judicial officer, there shall be published a constitutional instrument or a statutory instrument, regulation, that are not inconsistent with the provision of this constitution. This is where they raise the issue about President Mahama. And that because the constitutional provision on suspension say the president may, it means that the president should, they should have been published a CI or a statutory instrument to regulate how that may function appearing in Article 146 should be. No. You see, so the Supreme Court clarified that matter in Radford, France. Because the conversation in Radford, France was that because the EC had not brought up an instrument to show how to create new constituency, the new constituencies that were created in 2012, everything done under it were unconstitutional. In the reasoning of His Lordship Justice Databa then raised the issue of nuclear meltdown and said that no, that is not the reasoning. If not, any time the president wants to exercise a discretion, it means that he must come up with a constitutional instrument. That is how Radford, France, in that matter, the new constituencies in 2012 were created. Because they wanted that entire CI set aside. And I remember it was my lecturer in company law, Jogati, who was the lawyer for Radford, France, in that matter. And so I think it must be very clear that the Supreme Court itself has spoken authoritatively on this matter. It doesn't work that way. If not, any time the president wants to exercise a discretion, he would be required to provide a constitutional instrument to guide that. And that is where His Lordship Justice Datiba said, no, if that is the case, even the functioning of executive power will grind to a halt. At this point, there is only one person who can exercise that power under Article 146, and that person is President John Dramani Mahama. So everything that has been done so far is within the confines of the 1992 Constitution.
Solo, in the court of public opinion is the very copious commentary that so-called, this is an NDC MPP matter, and that there has been predetermined based on public narrative, so to speak. But it looks like you go by what the research findings are. The international community is quite serious. I can assure you that a lot of investors will withhold their investment from your country by virtue of that kind of question. For somebody of his kind and experience speaking this way, should be taken seriously. How do you respond to that criticism that is unprecedented, shouldn't be done, so to speak, in the Fourth Republic?
What name did you mention?
Sam Okujeto, the distinguished legal practitioner.
Was it the lawyer, that's the senior lawyer who, after a judge had found the processes leading to the suspension of Sosu's license, when the judge set it aside, he went attacking the judge? Is that the man talking? There are some people with the greatest respect, we should put padlock on their mouth. Was it not on the Council of State that advised Nanado to appoint Apiahine as the Electoral Commission member? Is it the one talking? Please, please, please. You see, we've accorded a lot of people with great respect, and they shouldn't take that for granted, with the greatest respect. Reputation,
Ghana's reputation, international community. What's the counter-argument?
There's no such thing. What investors want to see is a president, okay, who will comply with the constitutional dictates. You see, what investors are worried about is that the president has a case before a judge. Listen carefully. And the person transfers a judge arbitrarily. Look at the Opuni matter, where His Lordship Justice Anoche Jima had made a finding that because he is taking over from Honyenuga, there should be a de novo trial. And because of that, for whatever reason, he was immediately transferred to Kumasi. That's what investors are worried about. What investors are worried about is when a high court judge is deciding a matter, he goes on vacation. By October, when he's supposed to start the matter, he's transferred to Sunyani. That is what investors are worried about. And you see, Senior Sam Okujetu, he was on the disciplinary committee. He didn't hear some of these things. Situations where high court registrars get transferred to district courts for no apparent reason. That is what investors are worried about.
They told you that?
I am telling you.
For no apparent reason?
That is what investors are worried about. Look, you see, they shouldn't allow people to open the Pandora box. No. In fact, the silence will make a lot of sense. I'm telling you.
Make a lot of sense? Edudzi Tamekloe.
Will make a lot of sense. Look, I'll tell you something that I personally went through. The Electoral Commission decided to do voter registration. Yes. If you remember, September 2023, I represented the NDC as his lawyer. We issued a writ and asked for an injunction against the EC. Do you know what happened? When we applied for an injunction, we were given a date, 17th October, which time the EC had finished his work. The same person. Now look at the situation where Afenyo Makin issues a writ in the morning by 12.
And you're talking the matter related to the issues in Parliament?
Yes. By 12 noon, a writ is issued with an application. Friday, Supreme Court judges don't sit on Fridays. Everybody knows this. By 2 p.m., 5 Supreme Court judges have been assembled to listen to Afenyo Makin's thing. And you think investors are happy? My learned senior Sam Okujetu had been in this country and saw these things happening. You see, when you grow to the point of Senior Sam Okujetu, the only thing you have is truth. Because what else can you live for than the truth? Because when you get to a certain level or age in life, you speak the truth, and you speak truth to power. He saw all these things happening when he was a principal advisor of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo for 8 solid years. Look at all the rots that happened under Akufo-Addo when he was a Council of State member. And today he says what? These things will stop investors. Look, I want to even respond to a bit more serious issue. The minority says that this removal process...
Personal vendetta, intimidation, attack on the judiciary, and then lastly, a coup d'etat, Edudzi Tamekloe.
The most ridiculous one is the fact that doing this shows President Mahama wants to pack the courts. Did Akufo-Addo remove any Chief Justice before packing the courts? Because the president doesn't need the Chief Justice, really, if his intention is to pack the courts. The Chief Justice is not a principal person. All he needs is the Judicial Council. That's all. And even that one, it is on the advice. In fact, if you recall, the Supreme Court had the opportunity of litigating the matter of Richard Delasky. Yeah. And the Ghana Bar Association, when President Mahama decided to appoint His Lordship Justice Yahapao and Puaman, the Ghana Bar Association went to the Supreme Court and challenged the process that the Judicial Council advice was effectively binding on the president. The Supreme Court says no. So today, President Mahama does not need the Chief Justice if his intention truly is to pack the court. Because that is for him to do. The other thing is that they say, oh, it's a reckless abuse of executive authority. Where from this abuse? Today, if you comply with the Constitution, you are rather accused of abuse. So they want President Mahama to act unconstitutional, like the way the Supreme Court found Akufo-Addo to have acted unconstitutional in the removal of Domelevo. No. What President Mahama has, which is a benefit, is that he has sound advisors. Thankfully, President Mahama doesn't have an executive secretary who is a lawyer. Nana Addo had an executive secretary who is a lawyer, but told him to act unconstitutional. You remember cease and desist and the rest. We have seen things in this country before. We have survived it. 4 months into the leadership of President Mahama, you are already raising issues of reckless abuse of executive authority. Where is that abuse? Is there anything that President Mahama has done so far that is not provided for by law? No. 2. I've listened to my learned senior Atachia. You see, sometimes, you see, we don't have short memories. Oh. You remember the famous Atachia tape?
Yeah.
Yeah. After President Mahama won the election of 2008, and I'll conclude on that. If you recall,
As Professor Mills.
Professor Mills, he was caught on tape saying that they want to injunct the Electoral Commission. And for that matter, he had spoken to the sister-in-law, the Chief Justice there, that when they go to court, they should raise an issue about the presiding judge, Justice Edward Asante, that he used to work with Cash Pro. And for that matter, he could not sit on that case. And that when they raise it, she, the Chief Justice, would transfer the case to another person. And Atacha says, what? Look, these people, sometimes they think that we have short memory. No. For the sake of peace and others, there are things that have happened. We say, no, let things go. But with the greatest respect, we are not amateurs. We know our history. The audio recording is still there with Atacha on live tape. Basically saying that there has been what do you call it? Ex-party communication with the Chief Justice there. That once this issue is raised about the learned judge, the case will be transferred from that judge to a different, in order to get a judge who injuncts the declaration of President Mills in 2008. We've gone through all this checkered history and we are quiet. It doesn't mean we don't know what has happened in this country. We have a fair idea. And so I will plead with my friends on the other side that just as they kept quiet and allowed President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo to exercise his powers under the Constitution, Article 146, in the removal of Madam Charlotte Osei, they should exercise patience. They should calm down and allow President Mahama to exercise his powers in the 1992 Constitution. I am a servant of President Mahama and the Constitution. Now, let me just conclude. At the back of the Constitution is the oath of office for the president, presidential oath. May I read it briefly? Please do. He said, quote, having been elected to the high office of the President of the Republic, I will be faithful and true to the Republic of Ghana, that I shall at all times preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the Republic of Ghana.
What's your point with this?
This is the oath President Mahama took. And incidentally, the oath was administered to him by her ladyship, Gertrude Tokonu. So right in front of her, President Mahama will now be doing something contrary to the constitutional dictate. That is grounds to impeach President Mahama. I am a lawyer. Why would I advise President Mahama that go and disobey what the Constitution says?
Okay. All right.
Woe betides me if I do that.
Solomon, why is it that?
I think that two things have happened here, relative. One, he is the senior most of the Supreme Court. And by law, it is not an appointment of the president. He assumed that role by operation of law, being the senior most. He assumed that role by operation of law. Nothing more, nothing else. I think it's also important. Look, my Lord Justice Bafo-Bonny came to the High Court through an appointment by President Kufuor.
President John Kufuor.
President John Kufuor.
Oh, okay.
Court of Appeal by President John Kufuor. Supreme Court by President John Ajekun Kufuor.
2008.
2008. He had distinguished himself as a judge, having gone through the mill. There's a story I always say about my Lord Justice Bafo-Bonny. if you recall, the trial of Mrs. Rawlings, it was before my Lord Justice Bafo-Bode, then at the High Court. And anytime President Rawlings followed Mrs. Rawlings to court, he would never sit down. He was always standing.
I see.
And so my very senior, Nana Ajay Ampofu, was then the lawyer for Mrs. Rawlings, sometimes pleading with former President Rawlings that no, this is in contempt. So he should just sit down, he will not. I mean, this is a man who had gone through the mill, distinguished himself. Groundbreaking cases, he has sat on it. He had the skill set to act. If at the end of the day, the 5-member persons who on the committee finds that there is no merit, they will give appropriate recommendation to President Mahama. And President Mahama will act on those recommendations. I recall vividly when the committee that sat on Charlotte Osei's matter, my Lord Justice Anthony Benin, my Lord Justice Agnes Doji, the late Justice Mafo Sao, Abrapia, and one woman, they sat on it. At the end of the day, they made recommendations to President Akufo-Addo that on the basis of procurement breaches, she ought to be removed as the Electoral Commission chairperson, a very critical institution of state. But it happened. There were no women association. There was no call on clergymen, traditional authorities to intervene in that process. I'm surprised that I'm reading somewhere Christian mothers of Ghana raise the issue that President Mahama should stop the impeachment process.
What's your point?
The point is, if you read the Bible, you recall Pontius Pilate. Pontius Pilate had a benefit. All he did was Elijah Mahama, conveyor belt. He said, bring me water and soap. Wash his hand. He said, go to Judea. The Judea is the 5-member committee. That is what it is. So when he saw it, he said, Christ, this is what the people say you have done. They say you're all over the place calling you the king of the Jews. He said, if that is what they say, so be it. Pontius said, look, bring me the water. There is a response from the Chief Justice, and a supplementary response as that. And so at this point, President Mahama says, let's go to Judea for the final decision to be taken. Today. Whether the people want, the man that, there was an option whether to take that man or Christ.
Yes.
And the people said, no, they want Christ to be crucified. At this point, a 5-member committee, they have the power to adjudicate. And the beautiful thing with the constitutional provision is that you have your lawyer, you can actually call witnesses who will come testify, even cross-examine them. And if at the end, with the skill set His Lordship Asiedu, Justice Poorman, and thankfully, I just love the composition. President Mahama, you will say, appointed Justice Poorman. President Akufo-Addo appointed Asiedu. Fair balance. And then the rest. So they will go into it, look at all the circumstances. If they find merit, ultimately, in the petition, a decision will be taken, recommendations will be made to the president, and whatever would have to happen, would happen. So less people calm down. Investor community, there is no problem. Ghana is open. In fact, this is the kind of thing that investors want, rule of law and not rule of men, like we saw in the past.
Solomon. Yeah.
Thank you for staying tuned. PENDREAM TV really appreciates your time, and once again says, God bless you for the wonderful work you are doing and continue to do for us. And to all our cherished viewers, we urge you to subscribe for more videos, like and also share to other members of yours as well. And to all platforms you belong to, please do share so that they'll also know what is happening currently. Thank you for doing that for us. Stay glued to the channel by subscribing and turning the notification bell on. Thank you.
Dedi kama amena PENDREAM TV ase. Na so far so good. Say open online portal e wo Ghana. Nipa share, nipa follow, nipa comment here. To my best of knowledge, without any biases, PENDREAM TV.